We're speaking today with Geoffrey Williams, who is a member of the celebrated vocal chamber ensemble New York Polyphony. The upcoming season marks the group's 20th anniversary season, so we're just excited to take a little bit of time to consider where they've been, where they are now, and also what's coming up. Thank you so much, Geoffrey, for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
First of all, I'd love to get just an essence for the group dynamic. I feel like there's a certain amount of chemistry and maybe like a little bit of magic to for an ensemble to gel the way that New York Polyphony has gelled. So what has that group dynamic been like over the years?
Well, I must say it has changed a bit as we've grown up. I think we started the group as we were just sort of approaching our 30s. And we'd spent a few years as professionals in New York City, working from choir to choir, church gig to church gig. And that's how we met. And early on, we got our start actually making recordings. We did a Christmas program in 2006 for American Public Media, I think. And so our first performances weren't for people, they were for microphones. So there was sort of an immediacy to that scrutiny. And I think having that sort of start to our music making meant that we were really quite focused about sort of accuracy and really in tune to sort of the sounds we were making, not so much what other people thought of them. But as we've gone on, we spent quite a few busy seasons touring. I think our busiest year was maybe 2013, 14. We were on the road about 80 days, which is a lot for people starting to have families and dogs and wives and husbands and things. And then we didn't break up, but we started to move away from New York and find other musical outlets. And we started getting a few more degrees under our belt so that we could be better teachers. Because New York Polyphony goes on the road and does a lot of workshops and things. And so that means that we'd no longer live within 3 blocks of each other in Queens like we did when we started. So one of us lives in Oregon, I live in Wisconsin, one of our tenors is in Chicago, and Andrew, our tenor, is the only one left in New York City. He lives in Queens. But that means that when we come together, it's a very different mix than when we would meet every Friday in New York. So if it just sort of wasn't working on a Friday, we'd say, let's sort of give it up today and go have a beer. And now we actually meet with quite a bit of focus in the summers for retreats. We're about to have one to prepare for our 20th anniversary season, just coming up in a few weeks. So it's a different dynamic also than some of the other pro groups we would sing with, because whether it was a church service where we might learn a mass and sing it really well, we wanted to look at that music and give it really a good run and not just sort of sing it once and forget it. And the same thing has been true with other professional groups, that we wanted this to be a group that didn't have a lot of turnover. We've only had, 7 members of New York Polyphony. And so Craig, our bass, and I have been doing it for almost 20 years now. Stephen has been with the group since 2011, and Andrew's been with the group since 2020. So that's one of the things that I think makes us special, is that we know each other so intimately, both personally and musically.
Well, I'm thinking about all of the different accolades that New York Polyphony has received over the years, particularly with regards to the programming, really innovative programming with cross sections of music from many and varied periods. And there's, early music repertoire and brand new commission works and just about everything in between. So with so many possibilities, how do you go about curating your programs?
There's a few things that we've sort of discovered as our parameters. Again, when we began, we recorded some medieval Christmas carols for the radio, and we paired them with modern settings of the same. So we would do a piece like the Coventry Carol, which a lot of people know really well, and we sang the same setting by Kenneth Layton. And so that's been one of our programming choices, is to find texts that are shared maybe over the centuries and over the various styles and periods. And the other thing, as the person responsible for most of the programming, I've tried to avoid things like themes. So we won't do a concert that's water or fire or the spirit, though there are aspects of the texts we sing which might have a through line, which of course we're looking at. What we tend to do is we find a piece or 2 or 3 that we just absolutely love to sing and want to sing many, many times. So, for example, in 2011, we recorded some Flemish music, and we came to know the Lamentations by Thomas Crecillon really well. And that's a piece of music we're happy to sing on every single concert if we could. In fact, we've put it on our 20th anniversary program next year. The Thomas Tallis Mass for four voices, Bird's Mass for four voices are perfect for us. These are the kind of pieces that don't require a lot of transposition. Early on, we were looking at sort of SATB pieces, and we found that some of those pieces were just too much transposition. Um, then we came to a piece like the Pope Marcellus Mass of Palestrina, which thankfully we were able to bring in some friends and do it in the Chiavette transposition down a fifth, so that I'm not singing higher than comfortable and our bass isn't singing too terribly low. So we try and find the pieces that just we sing really beautifully. And then if there is a connection between either text and time, for example, our new record has a piece that we commissioned from a composer. Her name is Akemi Naito, and that's where the album title comes from, Sky of My Heart. And she set poems by Saigyo, who was a Buddhist monk in the 12th century. And we have another few pieces from a very early English manuscript, which we perform in quite a few concerts. And it's interesting to sing music from the 12th century in England that is contemporary to the poetry of these pieces that were written for us in 2020 by this Japanese composer who we just love singing those pieces and getting to know a different language and how sort of our very tight vocal mechanism works with that style, that sort of the syntax of the language, which took us a little bit of time to learn, and we had some good coaches for that.
Yeah. Well, check out what I have in my hand here. I
Look at
actually got, if
that.
my Zoom background will let me, yes, ready and waiting to go into our classical FM 91 library. And glad that you brought it up there with the title track, and also just many of the different texts in here are so fascinating. Now, you'll have to pardon me for jumping straight to the macabre, but there's a piece, My Days, I think it was called, which combines Psalm 39 with an autopsy account. I feel like I need to know the story here.
Sure. This is a piece that was written by Nico Muley, and we've been wanting to get Nico to write something for us for a while. But as it so happens, when I was still living in New York, when we were all still in New York, Craig, our bass, and I sang the American premiere of this piece with fretwork, and it was composed for the Hilliard Ensemble, which was an important group for us, an inspiration for us. So it was good to sing the premiere of that, and we said this is a piece that New York Polyphony needs to sing and record. But as we got to know the piece, it is very interesting that he took the words of Psalm 39, Lord, let me know mine end and the number of my days. And the autopsy is interesting because Gibbons, Orlando Gibbons, whose anniversary we celebrate this year, actually his 400th anniversary, wonderful composer of the early 17th century, late 16th century. He was traveling with the Chapel Royal at the time, and he ended up in Canterbury and died very suddenly. And so they had to do an autopsy quickly because they were wanted to make sure folks didn't start a panic over the plague. So we have a written account of his autopsy. It sounds like he probably died of an aneurysm or some sudden malady of the head, but it's quite graphic in how it talks about, how they say he died. But it's also sort of, there's a melancholy, but also maybe sort of a catharsis to it, which I like very, very much. The sound of the viols, which go back and forth between being very smooth, very lyrical, but also quite jarring. They sound as if there are maybe convulsions happening. And it's a piece that's an absolute joy to sing. Nico writes in such an interesting style. He blends old and new sounds. He takes the old words and sets them really beautifully. And of course, the viol is sort of the instrument that's the most like the voice. In fact, you can hear our viols breathing with us, which we like that sort of organic nature to it. We don't do an awful lot of recording or performing with other ensembles, so this was really a nice thing to do. And it's a big piece. It's about 16 minutes long. It's something I'm always moved by either listening to or during the recording of it. It's really quite powerful.
Is there a viol accompaniment for each of the selections, or just for a few?
Well, since we had them there for My Days, we decided to do a few other things. When we made our recording Times Go by Turns in 2012, we recorded the Bird Mass for four voices, Tallis's Mass for four voices, and one by John Plummer. And one of the recordings I listened to was by one of the English groups, I think called Phantasm, and they had recorded the Bird Mass without text, without voices. And that was sort of the inspiration for how we wanted to perform the piece. So we've re-recorded the Agnus Dei from the Bird Mass with the viols since they were there. And I've sort of messed with a piece a little bit. Gibbons wrote a number of hymn tunes, and probably people know it best as Drop, Drop, Slow Tears. But I took another text, which we think might even be by Gibbons, which is The Silver Swan, which talks about the sound that a swan makes before it dies. And so it's a good pairing with Gibbons' sort of autopsy in Psalm 39, and sort of the finality and the sort of divinity of death, and how folks can look at whatever the afterlife means to them. So there's kind of there's a programmatic marriage there, which we like very much. And I just, I mentioned the word catharsis. There's something cathartic about singing it. And we have another piece on the record by Andrew Smith called Catharsis, which is the Norwegian way to say the word catharsis. And that's a setting of the Lamentations of Jeremiah. Quite different from the settings folks might love by Tallis or Bird or Victoria. But he wrote that on the death of his father. He was dying of bone cancer. And again, this is a piece which we came to love and appreciate because it's the first piece we sang together after not seeing each other for 2 years coming out of the pandemic. So it was a piece we got to really feel like was our own sort of flushing out of sort of the horrors of that time. And so it's a piece, again, like those Crechion Lamentations from, 11 years ago now, that we really love to sing on almost every concert.
Yeah, so those would be, I guess, the last three tracks of the album. What are some of the pieces leading up to that were maybe highlights for you personally?
The whole record is really a culmination of a lot of the pieces that we've been collecting over the years from contemporary composers. There are some pieces by Ivan Moody, who wrote a setting of the Vespers for us in 2016. But the pieces we recorded are actually his first setting of the Song of Songs, which are three very short little pieces that we've sung quite a lot in concerts. Really a wonderful sonority. It's just sort of 5 minutes of E flat, which is great. But we added onto that a piece which we've been trying to do for years, and I think perhaps this current makeup of the group is the best to sing the piece called The Lamb by John Tavener. It's a really well-known and beloved piece by choirs, but it just happens to work with the four of us now. And Ivan Moody was John Tavener's protege, wrote his obituary, and sadly, Ivan Moody died in January of 23, so we were sorry to lose him. And then the pieces by Paul Moravec, again, we had a number of chances to have a coffee or a beer with Paul in New York. He's very well known for his operas. He was nominated for a Grammy for his opera The Shining, and he wrote a fantastic oratorio called Sanctuary Road about the Underground Railroad. But he has his start sort of in singing in church choirs like we did. And so he just gifted us these pieces. They just showed up in the inbox, which is nice, not to have to fundraise or have a competition for things like that. And he wrote these two. He's actually written us three pieces. We're going to look at another one soon, but they're all based on Walt Whitman texts, which is interesting to hear modern polyphonists, that is to say, finding counterpoint in ways that voices work together in a way that doesn't sound like cacophony, but really sounds like really beautiful music, which Paul does write. And again, to have the music by Akemi Naito, it's lovely to have we have two women composers on this record. Becky McGlade is a British composer and cellist who set a very old text by Prudentius, of the Father's heart begotten, or of the Father's love begotten, it's sometimes translated. So it's a nice mix, and we have a few early pieces in there. As we were recording the piece, it was the anniversary of Bird's death, 1623 and 2023. So it's kind of the mix of what you'd hear in any concert, some old things and some brand new things, and we have some other things in between that aren't in this record. We've spent a lot of time in Germany in the last few years, last 10 years or so, and so we've learned quite a few pieces of 19th century German lieder, Schubert especially, some Reinberger, Bruckner, things like that, which are an interesting thing to have with our vocal makeup. So instead of a tenor on top, you have my countertenor voice. So we sometimes do a little transposition up, which means that our tenors are both sort of in a shinier key. Our bass isn't stuck down in the basement so much. And so this has been a fun sort of way to get to know our ensemble as we've grown up, now that we're old guys in our 40s and 50s. But it's
Old
nice.
guys, right.
Aren't we? Hate to say it, but so it's been just a great journey for the last 19, almost 20 years of getting to know one another. And we sometimes jokingly call it our second marriages, because when we're on the road, there's all the the great things and the bad things about getting to travel with people, uh, and who's late all the time and who's too early and who doesn't like to drive, and what kind of restaurants don't we like. And but that may seem kind of trivial, but I think it's part of what goes into making the group who we are, is how well we know each other and work together. So and again, we don't really have a music director per se, so it's really coming together to work as friends who know each other really well.
Sky of My Heart released in June of this year, is that right?
That's right.
So we're a couple months out here. Have you had any listener feedback or reception at this point?
We have. There. I don't think there's any piece that is difficult to listen to, but they're the pieces that you want to listen to more than once, I think. Even something like, the bird piece that we open the record with is Ecce Quam Bonum, behold how good and pleasant it is for people to live together in unity, is really busy polyphony for just four voices. And so that's a piece where if you don't pay too much attention, you're going to miss some of the detail. So I think a lot of folks have said how much they want to listen to the record over and over again. There's so much little intricacies in the pieces with the viols and Nico Muelli's piece. And what we're most proud of is I think it's really the most beautiful singing we've done. I think there are some times when you're under the scrutiny of the microphones and you're on your 12th take of something because an airplane flew over or something. I think we really just wanted to sing as beautifully as possible, and that's what folks are saying about the record, is how beautiful it is.
And as we're looking ahead, is there anything we should know about upcoming touring information or projects or celebrations of your 20th anniversary?
Yes, we're starting a 20th anniversary in 2026, and we're going to begin that at a church in New York City, St. Mary the Virgin, right in Times Square is where we began in the choir there. And so that's something like September 18th of 2026. And we've spent a lot of time overseas, but we're going to focus again on being back in the States. So we have concerts in the fall of 25 in Virginia and Michigan, and we'll go to the Midwest to Kansas City and Lincoln, Nebraska, my hometown of Springfield, Missouri, we're going to go to. We have a lot of concerts in Texas and Florida, and we were out in San Diego, and we've been to New Mexico 3 times in the last year. So it's been nice to get to know our state audiences again. Coming out of COVID, actually, we did more concertizing overseas. So I think that's what we want to do, is sort of rebuild our American audiences, and because we've opened our programming up to more contemporary music, there'll always be something new or something old on our programming, but it's nice to sort of pluck in new things and get to know new audiences. So that's what we're looking forward to.
Yeah, something old, something new, something borrowed,
Yeah,
something blue.
great.
Well, congratulations on these last couple of decades of music making, and we're definitely going to keep our ear to the ground for those happenings. Thank you so much, Geoffrey.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much.